Hello everyone and welcome to Let's Read RWBY Before the Dawn. I am your host, Raymond McNeil of Celtic Phoenix Productions. Joining me today, as always, is the erstwhile Molly Rhyme Master. Molly, how are you doing today?
I'm living a waking nightmare of learning that the RWBY soundtrack is composed without anybody telling the composer the story.
I only heard the tail end of that because I was getting my headphones on. But yes, I completely concur with everything you just said. Because we were talking.
Soundtracks really do just be a nightmare.
They really do. Also, I'm noticing there is a frame. Where is webcams? There's something. There's a webcam frame that hasn't gone away that I need to. Is it this one? Ah, it's this one. Okay, there. Now, anyone that didn't notice it, you can't unsee it when you go back and watch that. Yes, hello everyone. Last time on RWBY Before the Dawn, we learned that there was a basically this was actually a Game of Thrones book, and we have two siblings wanting to be king and queen, which has a lot of really squicky implications. Though running theory is it's the guy that actually has the mind control semblance that's actually wanting to take charge. So I mean, probably that. Probably going to be that, because we can't have a female character be duplicitous or evil or anything like that.
Women can't be mean. What are you talking about? Anyway, somebody in chat asked about why the stream's early this week. It's early this week because there is a holiday and I can't stream Friday afternoon.
Yeah, and for the record, it will probably be early next week too, because on Friday I am getting a wisdom tooth removed.
Ooh,
yeah.
Nasty.
Yeah. Luckily, all my wisdom teeth have fully erupted, so like I have very little risk of like any kind of damage going on to like anything beyond it.
All right, let's move past the discussion of teeth. Yeah, RWBY soundtrack is overhyped, and yes, it's apparently it's just literally like procedurally generated music equivalent. But now I know why it's like that. Everything makes sense now.
The idea of procedurally generated music amuses me. I feel like that you could get some interesting results if you actually created a really good program for it, but like,
yeah.
I don't know how that would work.
I think there are some websites actually that like can generate little MIDIs for you. It's easy enough to just fiddle around a minor scale and give you a song, you know. It's sad now.
Well, there's a math museum in Germany, because of course there is in Germany. That's very fun in many ways because it has like these little like ways to play with math. It actually could be kind of interesting. And my favorite one there, the one that really stuck out to me, was there's a device that plays you a musical theme based on a random sequence number in pi that will auto-generate, and it will be unique every single time you play it because you just get infinite possibilities.
See, only good song was Until the End. I would disagree with that. I think Hero was good, and Until the End, considering the musical background of that woman, is yikes. You're telling me that the white girl with a short haircut made a sad piano ballad? Who would have guessed? Is she gonna break out a ukulele next volume?
Oh, Christ. Okay, I cannot imagine something more out of place than a ukulele in Atlas, and I know that RWBY would try to do it.
What RWBY really needs to do is use the Celesta. It's one of my favorite instruments to compose with. Because it's basically a gigantic music box, but a piano.
Huh. Never heard of that. I think everyone should try and use the hurdy-gurdy more often.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I love the hurdy-gurdy. Like, it sounds so silly as a name, but damn if it doesn't have like one of the coolest sounds. It sounds like frickin' Thor playing the strings of a violin. It's amazing.
The weirdest instrument I have in this room is a melodica. By the way, I'm just checking my mic here. Turn down the gain a little because I know I always sound loud. Chad always tells me I sound loud.
What I really like is those like otome things. Like they're like little
I
saxophones.
have one of those.
One of those?
I have one of those. Um,
Because the one I always watched was the lady that did the Ace Attorney theme on it, and it was just really good. Like, legitimately good. So, welcome to our music stream.
welcome to the music stream, guys. Oh, I think the batteries are dead. But I do have, like, the thing. It's just that the batteries are dead right now.
Yeah. I mean, you heard what I said. The one that really got me was the Ace Attorney theme being played on it. And I thought it was actually, it sounded really good. It actually sounded, like, pretty good. All right. Well. Oh, hey, we're actually starting with the antagonists. Interesting. Wait, does he? One minute. Does he actually have a character
I see discussion. Guys, Ironwood semblance, though.
Oh, God, don't even
Ironwood semblance, though. Wow, that was a cool character moment. Actually, it wasn't a character moment. Magic did that. Aren't we good writers?
Is this Scarlet's outline? I can't tell. One moment. I'm trying to see if it has the outline for Jax instead of anyone else. That's 14. What was the last chapter we had Scarlet running around? Yeah, no, it's using Scarlet's outline for this. Interesting. So maybe it's actually a Scarlet chapter and we just don't know it. All right, here we go. Jax Arsturius sat in his throne and stared at a brawny student chained to the metal spike staked before him. He knew who Yatsuhashi Daichi was, just as he knew about all the students at Shade Academy thanks to Rumple. But Yatsuhashi was not really a Shade student, at least not in the ways that truly mattered. He wasn't a vacuum. He was a refugee from Beacon. Someone... Oh! Music. There we go. He's a refugee from Beacon, someone who had abandoned his home when it needed him most. After Carmine and Bertolak had returned empty-handed, having let a boy with one of the most powerful semblances in Vacuo, if not all of Remnant, slip through their fingers, Jax had been particularly interested in Team Coffee. They were supposed to be the best of the best, but he knew their type. They were glory-seeking hotshots, flaunting their powers and their strength, holding themselves above all the other schools. It was because of people like them that Beacon had fallen. People like them would seal Shade's fate just as quickly. Jax was going to restore Vacuo to the way it had been, and he was going to do it by elevating everyone who followed him. He would be their king, but he wasn't going to place himself above them. If they could fight, if they believed in themselves, and Vacuo and the old ways, they would be equals. But first they had to eliminate the weakest among them and those who sympathized with the other kingdoms, who had their loyalties and others who had loyalties other than to Vacuo. Even those who placed their friends and family above the greater good. The greater good. The he's sounding like a true believer. It's almost as if people actually do horrible things in true beliefs. Because there's all that stuff that came out about Stalin recently. That he wasn't just a dictator out for power. He already had enough power. He was a true believer in the communist cause. So remember, kids.
Makes you think.
Yeah, makes you think. Communism, bad. And the stream gets demonetized. Ironically. Yatsuhashi stirred. He lifted his head and blinked blearily, turning back and forth in confusion. Jax saw the moment he realized he was trapped. Then the younger man locked eyes with Jax, pure rage etched into his face. Even as Jax hated everything about Yatsuhashi, he envied his strength. He might be weak in his commitment to his home. He wasn't even from Vale originally, so what was he doing attending Beacon? But he was an impressive physical specimen. He was big and strong, and Jax had seen him fight. He was all the things Jax had wished he could be. The vision of himself that could have been if his sister hadn't robbed him of his future along with most of his aura. Jax had envied her semblance too, until he discovered he had a powerful one of his own. Yatsuhashi also had a powerful semblance, and a dangerous one. It rivaled Jax's because he could manipulate memory, and it seems this disrupted Jax's psychic hold over others. If he couldn't be turned to Jax's side, he would have to be destroyed. I'm getting some vaguely Vaguely homo vibes from this guy. Oh, yeah, this guy's body. Yeah. No. You just need to play the, not epic sax guy. Careless Whisper, a little bit of that. You're awake. I'm giving him an obnoxious voice. Jax said. You're the crown. Yatsuhashi countered. He strained at his chains, binding him, muscles bulging, his face red from the effort. Such strength in him. How did you feel, Rumple? How did you free Rumple from my power of suggestion? Jax asked. I don't know, Yatsuhashi said. You don't know yet. But you did it twice more. Once more to free your teammate Velvet, Scarlatina. And again to free your friend, Sun Wukong.
Man, I hate this dude just by his voice, you know? Like, I don't care that he's villain. The force that's sending me. I'm trying to see if someone asked, like, what's their color? Because, like, they're supposed to have a color. So, Asturias is their last name. Which is a autonomous zone of Spain. Spain has a lot of those. They have their own language. I'm trying to see if the name means anything.
Well, I think it leads back to King Arthur. It's a King Arthur reference, I think. Because
yeah,
Carmine...
but they're supposed to be color. I'm sure... Lore!
Does Velvet find her original incarnation, Ryzen, and both of them head pat each other in the novel? No, Floof, that does not happen. If you didn't know, Velvet's model was basically ripped from a Toho character. Yeah. No, just like Adam's design was ripped from someone else, I believe. Correct me on that, chat. What other stolen... There was also then the... I believe it was a stolen model for the Paladin. That they had like...
Wow, I love how this show is just entirely devoid of originality.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
But you did it... I don't know. Yatsuhashi repeated. Either you're lying or you really don't know your own semblance, how your own semblance works. Interesting. Your file says you are constantly holding back your strength, afraid that you'll accidentally hurt others. Perhaps that holds true for your semblance as well. Perhaps if you wanted to, you could wipe anyone's mind clean. Yatsuhashi grimaced. So he was all too aware of his potential. He was truly holding himself back. Jax wanted him in his army. I could use someone like you, Jax mused. I'm sure you could, Yatsuhashi said. Come closer and free me from these chains, and I'll show you what my semblance can do. Jax laughed, then Yatsuhashi roared and the chains splintered apart, and Jax stopped laughing. Okay, I like where this is going. Jax jumped up from his seat, waiting to see what would happen, but Yatsuhashi didn't move. From the corners of his throne room, Jax's guards moved in on him, but Jax held up his hand to stop them. He won't hurt me, he told the guards. That's where you're wrong, Yatsuhashi said. Jax hesitated at the top of the steps leading down from his throne. As a kid, before Jill had shared her aura with him, he had been timid and feeble. He barely ventured outside, and one day when he had fallen into a sandpit. It's almost like building a fucking city over a goddamn pit. Sorry, that still irritates me. Why would you build a city over a bunch of pit drops?
Because it's cool.
No, you know who made this city? Animal Crossing grifters. Seriously, that's all this is. Whoever did this is the kind of person that would put like 36 layers of pit traps in front of their entrance to their island or whatever. Where is it? With barely any aura to protect himself, he'd hurt himself pretty badly. He'd been on bed rest for a month, recovering from a concussion, but it was in the dreamlike days that he started to fantasize what it would be like if he was not just normal, but also strong. Stronger than everyone else. And what he would do with that power. He decided that, like him, Vacuo had been weak too long. He would help his nation find its strength again. Rise to crush the other kingdoms under his heel. Its heels. Its heel. Brain, work with me here. Burying them in the sand of their own creation. And then, thanks to Jill, he'd been given that power. At Shade, he had learned to create an aura shield, and he had learned to fight, but he also had to fight his instincts to avoid harm, even though he was effectively invincible. He trotted down the steps towards Yatsuhashi and assumed a fighting stance. The young man smiled, but without any pleasure. Jax let him take the first swing. Yatsuhashi was a better fighter, no question. He was faster and stronger, and he knew how to take a punch. But his aura was finite, and it was already low from the cage fight using his semblance. Knowing Yatsuhashi's semblance, Jax was careful not to let his opponent touch him. When Jax was done playing with his opponent, he whistled for his guards to move in. His guards moved in. Yatsuhashi turned to fight them, but one of them was his classmate Umber, who once again immobilized him with a look. She was Jax's favorite recruit. "Thank you, Umber." Jax strode forward and stood in front of Yatsuhashi, careful not to break his eye contact with Umber. "Last chance. Join me. Fight for Vacuo. And if you don't do that, fight to save your friends' lives." "What do you mean?" Yatsuhashi mumbled through frozen lips. "If you join me, I'll spare them. I'll give them the same choice I'm offering you. They can become part of my army, or I can force them into service. It would be a shame to break up Team Coffee." "Again." Jax smiled. "No,"
His voice.
Yatsuhashi said. Jax sighed. He reached out and put a hand on Yatsuhashi's head. "Oh, he's giving... Floof, there's a head pat!" Just a really uncomfortable one. He felt the young man tremble beneath his touch. Even frozen by Umber's stone gaze, he was struggling to regain control. "You will obey me as your king and commit yourself completely to the service of Vacuo," Jax commanded. The boy's mind was slippery. After a few moments, he began to think maybe he couldn't link to it after all, but eventually he felt it engage. "All right, Yatsu, I want to make a point here. He has to put contact on you for his semblance to work. That means you are contacting him, and your semblance can work. Just the minute he goes in to touch you, just wipe his mind. Like, seriously, you just override everything. I think that would be a better
Floof
twist.
was happy.
Jax felt his constant headache worsen. It was always a dull ache in the background, but the pain spiked when he exerted his control over someone. It was a terrible burden maintaining his control over all the other minds. If he was under too much strain or stress, those links weakened and he had to reestablish them with a touch, just as Jill had to strengthen her bond with other auras. When Yatsuhashi stopped struggling under his touch, Jax pulled his hand away and stepped back. "Let him go, Umber." She raised her glasses, cutting off her control over Yatsuhashi and released. Can she control that? Does she have to have her glasses on? She like Cyclops?
I was about to say it's kind of like or it's really more like what was the one? Rogue? No, not Rogue.
Yeah, Cyclops is the one that had to wear glasses or he'd shoot lasers everywhere.
No, I'm thinking the one that had to wear gloves or everything
that was
she
Rogue.
touched died. Yeah, that was Rogue.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a combination of those two things.
Yeah. "Kneel, Yatsuhashi," Jax demanded. The young man lowered
That's
himself.
how my new fanfic starts, everyone. Go on AO3.
The young man lowered himself to his knees and bowed his head. "Look up at your master. Do you promise to follow my orders, to fight for your crown and kingdom, to give your life, your own life if necessary?" Yatsuhashi lifted his head. "I do." Jax raised his hands. "Then rise. Welcome to the Crown's army." Jax strode back to his throne, suddenly tired. Almost half of his army had joined this cause voluntarily, or for the promise of financial reward of ruling Vacuo, but the other half fought his control almost daily. "Call Jill," he told Umber. She pulled out a scroll and linked up with their headquarters in Vacuo. Carmine's voice on the receiver filled the hall when she answered.
All right. Yes.
This is Umber as well.
Jax wants to speak to Jill.
Umber explained. Jax and Jill hated using Legion technology and abhorred the scroll's reliance on dust, but they were necessary evils, for now. Even so, both twins refused to operate scrolls themselves. All right, so it's looking less and less likely that Jill is under his control, and more they're just both evil douchebags, which I appreciate. Umber held up the scroll, and Jill's face appeared on the screen. Yatsuhashi Daichi is under our control, Jax exulted. Hold it together, Molly. It's not that funny.
It's just... I don't know. It's just something about it's killing me. It is a funny voice.
Is Jill the one with the buttery smooth voice, or is that Pink?
Let me check. Let's pull up the notes here. I don't want to pull them up on my computer. No Evernote. Yes, Jill did have buttery. Apparently buttery means smooth, which I can't do that. Apologies.
Yeah, well,
I do not have a
this is
smooth,
Jill.
buttery voice.
She says good.
What was it? Good.
Said Jill. Then she sighed.
Do you need me to increase his aura, too?
I don't think that'll be necessary right now. When he recovers, he'll be strong on his own. Besides, you'll be busy enough.
These siblings are like the worst voice combination ever. When will that be?
Jax drew in a voice. Celebration and victory were near. Now is the time to strike, he announced. He had been preparing for this moment since they had left Shade Academy. Jax had thought it would take some 20 years before they could move their city to Vacuo, but then Beacon had fallen, giving them the perfect opportunity as chaos, confusion, and mistrust settled over the Four Kingdoms. Once again, Vacuo had been isolated from the conflict raging throughout Remnant. Only this time, it was an opportunity. With the global CCT network disabled, Vale in ruins, Haven leaderless, and Atlas closed off, Vacuo was theirs for the taking. This was likely their last best chance for a generation, and it was their only hope to defend Vacuo against whomever had been targeting the other kingdoms. In all likelihood, they had written off Vacuo, like everyone else did. But if they tried to move against the crown, they would have an unpleasant surprise. Vacuo wouldn't break this time around.
We aren't ready,
Jill said. Jax disagreed. We are ready. We are as ready as we can be. We've lost Rumple, and Shade is on high alert. Yatsuhashi's teammates will come for him soon. If we wait much longer, Theodore will be better prepared. He'll lose anyway, but it will take much longer and be harder on our forces. The time is now!
Jax, no.
Jill begged.
Don't do this. Not yet.
Listen to me, he told his sister with extra emphasis. Trust me! He finally got through to her.
Of course,
Jill said.
You know what you're doing. I trust you. With my life.
Okay, 2 notes. 1, it's sounding more and more like there is mind control at play. And 2, your voice for Jill sounds a lot like the American voice for Kari from Digimon. Which is cute.
I wouldn't know what that sounds like.
She actually had a very cute voice, so good work. And I trust you with mine. I don't have a choice, he thought. I will start the attack, and you will bring the rest of the army by evening, he said decisively. There was nothing left to say. Umber cut off the connection and looked to Jax, waiting.
Hey, right. Lumi in chat.
What's up, Lumi? How's it going? Also, hi everyone else in chat. How's it going?
But Lumi, you're cool. In particular. I've talked with you one-on-one before.
Yeah. Well, Lumi's done some good work for fixing RWBY. I can't wait to show off more of it. Yeah. Ready the forces. We moved on the city within the hour. I want you and Yatsuhashi by my side.
Yes, Your Majesty.
Umber glanced warily at Yatsuhashi, then hurried off to prepare. She was a good soldier, Jax thought. Was? You mean is?
Was.
Is. She's not dead. That I think I know what happened. That was a non-italicized line, and like later they changed it to one where it's Jax thought, as opposed to just having like a statement of she was a good soldier. So the tense change didn't get factored in that it would need to be present tense for that.
Yeah.
He turned to his newest recruit. What do you think, Yatsuhashi? Are you ready to fight? Yatsuhashi smiled. Always, Your Majesty. But I'll serve you better if I have my sword. Wonderful, Jax thought, imagining the mayhem such weapon would make for his cause. It's a sword, dude. Can't do too much. Jax waved at one of his guards, and the man hurried over with the young man's greatsword. Yatsuhashi took it and looked at Jax. He extended it without prompting. I pledge my sword to your service and to Vacuo. For crowning kingdom, Yatsuhashi said. Jax leaned back and folded his hands together, almost as if in prayer. I accept. Team Coffee had been a nuisance ever since they had kept him from acquiring the Caspian boy. With them out of the way now, he would be able to take the boy from Obscuro Combat School. And that was only the beginning. Yatsuhashi would defeat his own teammates, and then there would be nothing stopping Jax from ousting Theodore and restoring the ancient throne to Vacuo. Well.
Okay, so chapter's over. This is the obligatory girlfriend shout-out. Hi, Sarah.
Hello, Sarah. How's it going? How I was gonna say,
See if she's actually in chat.
Oh, I was gonna say, okay, about the voice. The thing is, when you have a silly voice for an antagonist, you might be surprised that it can actually work very well. But if the antagonist can't be taken seriously, if they're a joke in their actions, then the voice ends up falling flat. It ends up being a joke, as opposed to an effective villain with a silly voice. You really start to get kind of an uncanny valley effect where you're really uncomfortable hearing the silly voice. My favorite example of this
That's true. Maybe it's because I don't have a mental image.
My favorite example of this is Lord Karis from the Thief games. He's in Thief 2, and he's a sycophant of a religious order called the Builders, who are all about, working material and kind of reclaiming the natural world in the shape of order, like making order of the natural world by building things. And he's a radical where he's all about machinery and mechanics and metals. And so, like, all the time you have these robots that he's built that are new to the game systems that are walking around patrolling areas, and they have his voice playing through them, like describing their actions and all that. And his voice sounds like this. Hello, I am Lord Karis. I am here to destroy you, and I will reclaim the world from the natural order. Those who live among the plants and greenery will be molded into steel and stone. Like, he has that kind of voice, and when you first hear it, you're like, that's the doofy motherfucker. But then, like, as you're listening to the conversation, as it goes on, you realize that he's basically just poisoned a bunch of people and killed them all in cold blood. And you're like, all right, that's mildly unsettling. Then you encounter more of his clockwork soldiers and the like, and it gets bad. Where you're like, okay, this guy needs to die. This guy needs to die bad. He is a monster.
You know who else has a silly voice? Weiss. And I don't mean the plush, I just mean in general.
I mean, all the Team RWBY's voices got... Oddly enough, it's Barbara, of all the actors, that has actually improved as a character, as an actress. Everyone else has been directed terribly. I think Weiss has gotten a little... Still, like, goes too high into the nasal sounds. RWBY really overplays the childishness, and Aaron is just... Aaron.
RWBY, you okay? No. I'm angry.
I just want that gif of, like the puppet that slammed its head on the table to get the angry eyebrows on. That's what RWBY needs.
I know the one you're talking about. Tiny Weiss actually on the new microphone recorded a short song, and it It goes something like this. Get me out of the show. Get me out of the show. Get me out of the show. I think she's very talented.
I just had the image of like all the hits by Tiny Weiss and like one of those like TV ads where it's like her face like scrolling up and like it's like half transparent over like a sunset background with like the different track listings going off in the distance. Your favorite hits like Get Me Out of the Show and Please God, Get Me Out of the Show and Oh My God, seriously, Get Me Out of the Show. Your favorite hits.
I would not want to hear Weiss's actual voice sing. I know they change your voice actor for singing.
Well, yeah,
I always think of Weiss as having a voice that's like up here, which like doesn't sound good when you're going to sing with it because you're only going to hit super high notes and those are the only ones that will sound good because she's snobby. And just never let go of that.
Feel bad for the civilians of Vacuo. They're dealing with Mind Control Guy along with an all-for-one bootleg, and soon they'll be dealing with Salem and her flying gorillas. And they also live in Vacuo. Like, honestly, I think out of all those things, the flying gorillas are the least of their problem.
I would say like the biggest problem in Vacuum was just the constant threat of falling into a sand pit and seriously injuring yourself.
Why would you ever build a city like this? Like, I know in Cincinnati that, like, over the Rhine isn't exactly the best neighborhood, but that's because, like, you know, it's crime-ridden. People just kind of, like, it devolved into that. It didn't start out with pitfalls swallowing people whole.
How do you know?
Because I live here.
I know you do.
Oh, man. Is it over the Rhine? Oh, what am I thinking of? No, there's like, I'm like four territories divergent from the city. So you have downtown Cincinnati, then you have like the urban outskirts, which are they're the dangerous part. Then you have like the pseudo suburban outskirts. That's over the Rhine, and that's somewhat gentrified, but it has some shadier spots. Actually, where I went to school for high school. And then you have where I live, which is out in like the really nice suburbs. Although I'm actually one step away from the really nice suburbs. So I'm always sitting here on my little comfortable hill, and I'm like, this is nice. I look over, I'm like, but that looks way nicer. And it really sucks.
Looks like Floof is asking you about Vacuo.
I don't know at this rate. I get the feeling that, like, I feel like RWBY is going to wrap up probably at the end of Volume 12. That's my guess.
Vacuo will kill Salem because of how tough it is.
Salem just walks out like, yes, the final part of the journey. I shall, and then just never seen again.
I mean, you know what? Predictions for Volume 8 are going to be really interesting because they seem like hell-bent on retroactively ruining everything good about Volume 7. So my next guess is that Winter didn't actually have character development. Ironwoods just forced her to be that way or something.
My headcanon is that Ironwood's going to be like, no, RWBY, you were right. You were all right about this.
They're definitely going to paint him as an absolute evil.
Yeah, God, and I'm not, like, if they thread that needle, I will praise them for it. But I don't have faith that they will.
I mean, I'm still waiting for them to do, like, a big-ass reveal, you know, or it's just like, actually, this was intelligent all along, you idiot, you fucking morons. But that's not usually pulled off well. They were almost going to do it in Volume 6. A lot of things were going to happen in Volume 6.
Yeah, Yeah, like they were going to actually get the Atlas in Volume 6. What else was going to happen in Volume 6?
Fat Man made a good point that the apathy could have been a great out to explain everything in the show.
How so? I don't quite remember that argument.
Because of, like, people just sidetracking and not caring and being less than appropriately emotional.
Yeah, but then they would have to be present everywhere in the show at all times.
I forget exactly what his Volume 6 review said, but it was something along those lines.
Yeah, I have to go back and watch that before I get to Volume... I mean, I have to get to the Volume 5 fixing, and that already is giving me a headache. I'm not even working on it, and it's giving me a headache. I need to finish the Volume 4 fixing, although I have that all written. I mean, just need to actually edit the shit together. Don't worry, guys, it's coming, for the record. It's actually coming, but a lot of the artists were like, hey, we want to do more work, and so I gave them a bunch more work, and now I'm actually waiting on that now. Kind of backfired on me, I know, but, like, I think the results are going to be worth it. There's some cool stuff coming our way.
We are considering music for Volume 5. That's a very hard maybe.
That's a very hard maybe. We gotta, like, she's excellent with the writing stuff, but we gotta actually get performers, and that's the real difficulty.
My singing is, and my setup is, and my recording skills are, but I can write a good set of lyrics, and that's what matters sometimes.
I want to see Atlas crash in the mantle, and Team RWBY looking at it in horror as they realize that it was their fault. And all the... Yes, I would love that. That would be my favorite result, is that, like, everything goes to shit, Atlas crashes in the mantle, people die in the thousands, and Team RWBY is just sitting there holding the ball like, we didn't do that, and they're like, yeah, you did, dumb bitch.
Maybe you should have told the truth about things.
All right. Oh, it's a Velvet chapter.
Oh boy, my time to shine, and it's my turn too. It's a short one. Velvet had only been in the headmaster Theodore's office once before, when Coco, Fox, Yatsuhashi, and she had arrived, tired, thirsty, and nearly beaten by the hard journey through Vacuo, dispirited from losing Beacon. Not that she wished she had been called to the headmaster's office more often. Until she had joined Team Kifty, Velvet had always tried to keep a low profile, and that was still her instinct, even though Coco and Fox had a habit of getting them into the worst situations. At first, Velvet realized her team was a bad influence on her. But eventually she'd realized it was just the opposite. They had helped her, and even Yatsuhashi learned to take more risks. In turn, she and Yatsu helped moderate their more headstrong friends' impulses. Damn, we have another Molly in chat. What's good?
What? Where?
Hang on. Just
oh, Molly Rehano.
Rehano?
Rehano.
Most of the time. Though on the surface they were all wildly different from one another and shouldn't have come together as well as they had turned out to complement each other perfectly. It hadn't always been easy, and they'd have their rough patches, but Velvet couldn't imagine it any other way. No, opposites attract. Especially after a recent experience as part of Team Novo. It's so funny, like, my girlfriend is, like, really, like, agreeable and calm, and then you have me.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that.
Opposites attract. That meeting with Headmaster Theodore had been tense. Velvet had worried they'd have to beg for admission to Shade. She'd been overwhelmed by everything they had gone through, not to mention the Headmaster's strong presence. Back then, she kept quiet, studying her surroundings. Unlike Rumpel, Headmaster Theodore seemed to be the sentimental sort. That, or he liked showing off the important friends he had. His office was covered in pictures of him posing with the headmasters of the other Huntsman academies, and even the Shade teachers. Velvet had recognized a picture of Ruby's Uncle Crow and wondered what the connection was. She still remembered that her attention had been drawn to one photo in particular, a black and white picture of a young girl in pigtails in a checkered dress with a small black dog. She hadn't mustered the courage to ask who she was to Theodore. A daughter? A sister? Whoever she was, Velvet could see the resemblance. Some of those pictures were missing now, though it was likely no one but Velvet, with her photographic memory, would have noticed. The framed pictures of Theodore with Professor Lionheart from Haven, General Einward from Atlas, were gone completely. and one picture had changed positions, now occupying a more prominent position on top of the wall. The one of Headmaster Theodore and Professor Ozpin.
Huh. Taking down all the headmaster images. I mean, Lionheart makes sense, but Ironwood and Ozpin, why would he take those down? I don't know. Weird. Yes, someone actually said my last name right. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome, Molly. I always like that when like it's like people are like, oh, people never guess my name right. I actually get it right on like the first go, because there was one of my patrons, I can't remember who it was, but like they were like, man, I can't wait for you to butcher my name, and then I got it right, and they was like, oh my god, you got it right, and I'm like, yeah, it's almost as if I speak 3 languages. Guys, I study language. I love to do it. It's fun. Even though I can't speak very well, it's fun.
Velvet's eyes burned when she saw it. She blinked back, tears, memories flooding through her mind. When she regained her composure and turned her attention to the group, she noticed Headmaster Theodore was watching her.
I sent someone to Mirage to look for Mr. Daichi.
Theodore announced to the whole group.
They reported that there was no one there. The place looks like it hadn't been touched in decades.
Your emissary might have been lying, Rumple pointed out. In these times, we don't know whom to trust, aside from the people in this room.
Don't worry, we'll find him.
Theodore clapped and jumped up from his seat. Then, unusual for him, he listened to an entire debriefing as Sun and Coco told him what they learned from Finn Asturias about his children, Jax and Jill, and their ambitions to rule Vacuo. Finn himself was waiting in a guest room under guard.
I knew this Asturias kid was trouble, didn't I, Rumple?
Headmaster Theodore said. Which one? Rumple asked to clarify.
Jax!
I hate the amount of he asked, she said.
Yep. Jax! He never fit in here. He held his sister back. She would have been a fantastic huntress, but he never stepped up.
Hold on, Rick starts. If you can say my last name right. Risheg?
Risheg.
We may have that wrong.
We might have it wrong.
It helps if you tell us the origin of the last name.
Yeah, like that doesn't seem to derive from common lingual tics.
Anyway.
Yep. Where were we?
He certainly seems to have stepped up now, Rumple said. Theodore scowled.
He's still a weak, scared little boy under it all. I've dealt with people like him before. Oh, we got it wrong.
He glanced at pictures on his wall. Then he shook his head and ran back to the desk. Just watching him is tiring, Velvet thought. Oh, we were wrong.
Well, there's Rixeg. Rixig?
It's not. Sorry, you're not wrong. It's not my last name.
Oh.
Doesn't look like he's gonna give us like the ethnic origin of it.
Well, I'm wondering, kind of,
Razak.
is he like a Final Fantasy child?
No, it's a misspelling of, or a different spelling of Razak.
Interesting.
Razeg, I can see that.
Oh, did it not? It's a G? Oh, it's a Q.
Yeah.
So it's a Razag. Interesting. That's a dope name.
Yeah.
All right, well, better than my friend Defunquez.
Shoutouts to Defunquez.
All right, we keep losing our place because of this. All right, where are we? Yeah.
The city's huntsman.
The city's huntsman can handle the Asturias twins for now. We have bigger threats to worry about.
Yeah. Velvet wasn't sure she'd heard him right, and apparently Rumple wasn't either. But Theo, she objected.
I will not be lured into a trap. If I invest our full strength into this fight, their attack could weaken us from the big one, if and when it comes.
Theo, what if this is the big one? Rumpel asked. Have you considered that Jax and Jill could be part of a broader conspiracy to weaken Vacuo? Just like the White Fang did at Beacon and Haven. What if they're just the advanced troops, so to speak?
This isn't Beacon!
Theodore roared. He punched a ruby glove into the wall beside his desk. I did that yesterday, and it made a hole. The impact left a huge crater and shook the wall enough for all the pictures to fall to the floor. Cracks spider-webbed across the wall from the force. Yes, that's... You pointed at it.
And
uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Velvet looked again at the photo of Theodore Nospin, the glass over the frame now shattered. Since the reinitiation, she'd done a lot of thinking about the vacuuming way of doing things. Or at least the way Sun had described them to her. When too many tragedies started piling up, Sun said, vacuums felt the best thing to do was to bury them, get stronger, and win next time. Cultural compartmentalization.
Everyone take a shot.
Team Kiffy had tried things that way once before, and it hadn't worked out too well. She was about to say something when Coco stood up. You're right, Coco conceded to Headmaster Theodore. The attack at Beacon was a surprise. No one was ready to deal with the combined forces of the Grim, the White Fang, and the compromised Elysian army. She took a deep breath and moved on to her argument. But we know what's planned here, and chances are it's going to happen soon. The Crown is clearly building an army. It isn't in our best interest to underestimate them. Coco exchanged a glance with Rumpel, who took over from there. I agree, Rumpel said. They have control over people with powerful semblances and can manipulate aura. You don't build an army unless you intend to use it, and there's only one target out there.
I think you're overestimating their strength and competence. This isn't the first time people have agitated for Vacuo to go back to the old ways. Even to move against other kingdoms and take their resources as they took ours. These are just revenge fantasies. Isn't it the true way of Vacuo? No one has ever been able to rally enough support for Vacuo to do anything. Not since the Great War, and look where that left us. We aren't powerful enough to take anything from anyone.
Everyone in the room glared at him.
What? Someone had to say it.
Fox frowned.
But Vacuo is strong. Certainly strong enough to keep what we have left. Until we prove it, it's just words.
Theodore held up his fists, and the dust-encrusted ruby gloves sparkled. He considered them for a moment, then lowered his hand. Velvet slowly walked over to the fallen pictures. She picked one up and gazed at it somberly for a moment. Theodore probably didn't expect her to hear from her, which made it important that she speak. Sir, she began, you might think that Jax and Jill are just kids, but we are just kids too. And if they're willing to fight for Vacuo, the Vacuo they believe in, as hard as we fought for Beacon, then I think it would be a mistake to dismiss them as a threat. That kind of mistake we can't walk back from. Velvet replaced the picture she held on the wall. The glass had shattered, but it still clearly showed Theodore and Osmond arm in arm. Theodore sighed, like the photo had somehow changed his mind.
No, I suppose we shouldn't take any chances.
He strode back to his desk and sat down.
Besides, this might prove a good warm-up before the big fight begins. It's time to get serious. It's time to get ready.
He pressed a button and a microphone rose out of the desk. He leaned into it and spoke.
Attention! Shade Academy students! Effective immediately, your original teams have been restored. Gather in the courtyard and don't forget your weapons. Thank you.
Oh, I liked voicing the other people. Anyway, he stood up.
If the Crown attacks, they will come here first.
He glanced at Velvet.
But I said it before and I still mean it. We can handle anything that comes at us. By working together.
Ooh. They heard shouts outside, getting louder by the second. Soon they were joined by bursts of gunfire and explosions. The group exchanged glances, then the floor rumbled beneath their feet. Theodore waved a hand over his window, and the view changed, showing the wall between the Academy and the city of Vacuo. The Crown's army was massed outside it, their silver armbands shining in the brutal sun.
Looks like it's time to put our words into action. For Vacuo.
For Vacuo.
Okay, let's see how long chapter 17. This is at 196. We can do another one. That's short. Damn.
Yeah, that was really short. We're only... How many minutes are we into the stream?
Oh, no, we're like an hour
60?
in. Oh, no. Almost an hour. We're at 50 minutes in. All right. Chapter 17.
It looks like a Coco chapter.
Yep.
With the power and fish and chip. And now I want fish and chips.
Oh, I'm getting Penn Station. I can't wait. I don't know if you guys don't have Penn Station up in New York, I take it.
What is it called?
Penn Station. It's a Cincinnati company.
Penn Station?
Yeah.
Man, I can go to the real Penn Station.
Well, ours is just like Cincinnati style. Well, I think it's East Coast styled subs, and it's just, oh god, it's amazing.
Loco Adele.
Not local.
All right, let's do this.
Yep. Coco has the
Not
starting
again.
line. Yep. Coco thought. She followed Headmaster Theodore and Professor Rumpel out of his office, running with her team to the courtyard. The rest of the students already gathered there were looking expectantly at the school's south wall. The rumble from the other side of the wall was deafening outside. The gates were closed because Theodore had ordered Shade on lockdown, but the Crown soldiers were hammering away with gunfire and cannons from the sound of it. Coco wondered how much the school's walls could take. Coco.
Oh. At least the Crown isn't using dust.
She thought. Dust would have made short work of the walls, and that's where Shade would have an advantage. "What are y'all doing standing around?" Theodore shouted to the shell-shocked students. "Time to defend your school!" "But who are they?" a student yelled. "Does it matter?" Theodore cried. "Charge!" Coco glanced down and noted that the other members of Beacon Brigade were already on their way to meet the threat. Running towards the danger like huntsmen were trained to do, they weren't going to lose this time. She itched to get down there herself, but she wasn't in this alone. She started out at the sea of Shade students, all of whom reflected the same fears she had seen on her classmates' faces in the nights the beacon fell. Go.
You're the headmaster. This is what we've been training for.
Coco pointed to the wall.
Or you heard the headmaster. This is what we've been training for. This is a battle, and we aren't going to win it by watching, so decide now. Do you have what it takes to be a huntsman, or are you going to give up on your home without a fight?
The students who had been enthralled by the unexpected sight of an attack on their school, or reliving the terror of the Battle of Beacon, shook free of their stupor, and they didn't bother taking the stairs. What was jumping off a building when a week ago they were dropped out of an Airbus?
Maybe there's some method to the reinitiation madness after all.
Coco thought. Still her.
Let's go.
Coco called to Velvet and Fox. Still Coco.
Let's stick close to me.
What she said, Sun said. Come on, Team Sun. They looked over the side of the terrace and ran down the steps, sloping sides of the school. They had cleared the building's 3 levels and were racing towards the south wall in no time. It didn't sound like the Crown was attacking from any other direction, though if they had their agents on the outside, they wouldn't have to. Coco tapped Fox on the shoulder and opened his TeamSpeak to the students they trusted most. "Hey, Beacon Brigade," Fox sent. "This is Fox. Yeah, if you didn't know already, I can talk to you telepathically and can facilitate all the talking together. Deal with it. Use this channel to coordinate along the battle."
Be on your guard. The people attacking us call themselves the Crown. They've been kidnapping and recruiting people from the city, even from the school. So you'll be up against opponents with strong semblances, maybe even friends. They may not be in control of themselves. Oh, hey, Reese. What's that supposed to mean?
Reese asked.
The Crown can control people's minds.
Velvet elaborated.
Oh, my internet is one minute here. That should be better.
Ah!
Yeah, okay. Hello?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Right,
Sorry
there we
about
go.
that,
Getting
everyone.
you back up there.
My building's Wi-Fi isn't great.
It's college
Anyway.
Wi-Fi. Of course it isn't.
Yeah. The crown can control people's minds, brainwash them. Oh, and their aura is supercharged. They're stronger, but we can still beat.
Got any ideas on how exactly? Nolan asked.
We'll figure it out. But for now, look for a small, thin guy with black hair and a crown.
Coco said.
And a gorgeous glowing woman who's also wearing a crown. They're the leaders.
Why would they be on the front lines?
Crowns! Got it!
Reese sent.
To make it easy.
Coco sighed.
Nothing about this will be easy.
By the time they had reached the south wall, the wall was gone. At least a big section of it had been reduced to rubble, and through the clouds of dust they saw an army of crowned soldiers on the other side, forming a wall of bodies. They all wore silver armbands. And behind that wall, Jax Asturias was waiting on a palanquin, being carried by Umber and Yatsuhashi. Wow! Wow, this guy's so pompous. It's Velvet.
Sorry, I was responding to something. Yatsu?
Velvet
Oh
said.
no.
Coco could only guess how she was feeling right now.
Fox, Yatsuhashi's over there. Can you reach him?
Coco called aloud. I'll try, Fox sent. Then a moment later, he's not responding. I can't tell if he's under Jack's control or not.
I'm going over there.
Velvet reached for her camera box. Coco held out her hand to stop her.
No, I'll get him. I need you to do something else, Velvet. I don't see Jill here. Do you sense her anywhere, Fox?
No, he sent. Nor Carmine. She must be guarding Jill.
Good.
Coco put her hand on Velvet's shoulder.
Go to the wastelands and stop Jill. The only way we win this is if we cut her off from the soldiers so she can't get here and give them more aura. If this is about taking me off the battlefield...
Velvet began. Coco shook her head.
It isn't. We could use you here, but I only need you there. But I need you there more. You're the best person for the job. Maybe the only person who can succeed, because with your semblance and Anizadora, you're a one-person army. We can't afford to send too many others with you.
Velvet looked shocked. Coco couldn't believe that she still thought. That she wasn't valued on the team until she remembered how Nebula had treated her that day in Sunnybrook's class. Coco Yachts. Where's Sunnybrook?
The mob hit during Sunnybrook's class.
Coco, Yatsuhashi, and Fox sometimes came across as overprotective, but they knew how strong Velvet was, and it had nothing to do with her weapon. But everything that Coco had said was true. Velvet was a pretty damn good secret weapon for moments like this.
The crowned soldiers also don't use dust, and you have the most powerful dust-based weapon in backbone.
She added. Velvet was warming up to the idea. She nodded and said,
I'm on it.
Coco had another idea, from the short-lived reinitiation.
Take Octavia with you. She knows the way.
Hey, good plan. I'm coming too. Sun popped out of nowhere. Coco's heart sank. Sun wouldn't have been her top choice for sure. She spoke sternly to him.
This isn't the time to bail on your team again, Sun. Or us. We need you here.
Sun pled his case. I'm not bailing on anyone. A good leader knows to go where they're needed most, and I'm still leader of season, like it or not. Velvet and I.
You called them season again.
I'm still a better name. I'm still the leader of season, like it or not. Velvet and I are both one-person armies. Gil and Carmine won't stand a chance against us, and besides, Jill kidnapped a bunch of people I care about, and if I can help free them, I want to do it. Scarlet gave Sun an appraising look. He'll come back, he said to Coco, whispering, whipping his bangs out of his eyes. And he's right. This time. He turned to Sun. But when you do get back, we're finally having a serious conversation. Sun nodded. So go, Scarlet said. We got this. Behind him, Sage and Neptune waved in support. Thank you, Sun said to his team. Even in the middle of the attack, he sounded grateful. Then he glanced at Velvet, who smiled. Let's go bring your friends home. I can't tell. I guess Velvet's the one that smiled. This is Velvet speaking, sorry.
I know. It's, the internet did its thing. Let's go bring your friend home.
Octavia arrived at Velvet's side.
Oh, this was the super deep one. I'm ready,
she said. From a little ways off, Rumple called.
Let's cover Velvet's son and Octavia's escape by engaging the enemy forces. Do not allow those soldiers to step onto campus. Understood?
I mean, you could have just told them, hey, don't let them get on campus. Like, the students around Coco roared in approval, though Fox winced. Coco smiled as she noticed the headmaster Theodore was there at the head of the student army when they surged forward, fist raised. He knew the first punch. He threw the first punch, hitting one of the crowned soldiers. The impact sounded with an undulating, ululating.
Yeah.
What the? I've never heard that word in my life.
I have. It's just usually not used for something like this.
I think they may have meant undulating. And the man went flying backwards, knocking his fellow soldiers down like bowling pins. While the shockwave kicked up a flying ring of sand that temporarily blinded the front line. Coco transformed Gyanduja into a gun and turned to tell Velvet now was their chance, but she was already on the move with Sun and Octavia. She glimpsed them briefly in the sand cloud, and then they were gone.
Right.
Coco ran forward alongside Fox. She had fired at the enemy. Some of them blocked her shots with their weapons. Some dove out of the way, but others just grinned as their enhanced aura protected them. This was going to be fun. It was a full-on melee. There was a firefight! Sorry. It was a full-on melee. Soon Coco was forced to fight with just her purse in close combat. It wasn't like fighting Grimm. These were other people, many of them trained huntsmen, who could fight more strategically than the creatures Coco had been up against. And she had to be careful to not injure the people on her side. She was used to fighting alongside Team Coffee, where she could trust everyone would be where they were supposed to be. And she had told them to be. She knew how they would think, and what they would do, what they are capable of. To her surprise, the Shade defenses were holding up well at least. And Coco had some experience working with the other members of Team Rosk, so she was pretty sure she could count on them.
Reese, I need a lift,
Coco shouted. On the edge of the skirmish, Reese using her two halves of her board in hand-to-hand combat with one of the crown soldiers, a woman about her age. But Reese slapped her board back together and zoomed towards Coco, zipping around the other combatants and hitting every bad guy she could in the back of the head.
What's up?
Reese asked.
Me.
Coco hopped up and grabbed on Reese's board.
Get me to Yatsuhashi.
Reese stabilized her board and raised them higher above the battlefield. Arrows and bullets came at them, but she dodged as they flew.
Uh-oh. We've got more company.
Coco looked around until she saw that Reese had spotted. Dark, flying shapes on the horizon.
Ravagers,
Coco said.
They'll just be the first.
The battle was already drawing the attention of the Grimm. Coco hoped that meant Velvet and the others wouldn't have to deal with them in the wasteland at least, but it was a bad development for the Battle of Shade. Soon they'd be dealing with both human and Grimm forces. But Coco wasn't going to let that get her down. Shade wasn't going to fall on her watch. They were going to win this one, save the school, and save everyone. Do it right this time.
This is your stop,
Reese said. Coco saw Jax's palanquin directly below her, carried by Umbra and Yatsuhashi.
Thanks,
she told Reese, dropping and firing at the target on her way down. She used hype to enhance her fire dust, tearing the makeshift throne to shreds along with anyone inside it. She landed in the wreckage, but there was no one inside. Where was Jax? It's almost as if having someone in a palanquin was probably not a tactical reason. There's probably a different reason to have that in the middle of a fight. Coco turned and stepped back. Then that was when she saw Yatsuhashi was standing there watching her.
Hey, Yatsuhashi,
Coco said.
You in there?
As he drew fulcrum, she noted the silver armband around his right bicep, just like the ones around Jax's soldiers. Coco sighed.
Really don't want to do this.
Coco, Yatsushi ran towards her, bringing his sword back. Coco planted herself in the sand and aimed her gun.
Last chance.
She called.
Please tell me you're bluffing.
Yatsushi roared and swung his sword at Coco's head. Right, let's see how long chapter 18 is, but I think that might be it for us.
I love doing emotional Coco.
203 to 210? That's another 7 pages.
These are short chapters. You can tell they were just kind of like, let's get it over with.
I think, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, 7 and a little bit. So do you think you can handle it, or should we stop there for the day?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Let's fucking go.
Let's go!
But yeah. Let's fucking go. Well, like 5-minute break, station identification. You are listening to 108.2, The Rhyme. Featuring Celtic Phoenix.
Is that you in there, Molly G?
Yeah.
Oh. What did Floop say that got you going, oh my god?
He sent me something. I think he sent it to you, too.
I can't pull that up because the camera is on Discord right now. Is it safe? What is it?
It is safe. It's the I'm angry edit.
You okay?
No,
I'm angry.
I'm angry.
I'm sure Floof will post it on Twitter or something.
Yeah, no, I got it. I can't get a good camera angle on it yet.
Well, that's going to be sent to all my friends.
Oh god, that is such a goofy scene. All right, well, we can take a bit of a break just for a moment here, so we can breathe, because that still reading is very intense. You're spoiling. No, we're spoiling ourselves because we want this book over with. It's not a good book.
I swear the biggest thing is the amount of he said she said. Like,
really, it is. It really does. Like, I noted it in the last book.
It holds back
really
the writing
drags.
so much.
It really drags on it. Like,
Raymond's kind of like my writing coach, and the thing he's really like drilled into me is to really just get into a scene, and every time it has to stop for he asked, she asked, it just tells it.
Yeah, like the way I usually handle it is like when I have dialogue, I usually pair it with characters doing things. Like, I really hate the image of characters just like, "Hi there, I'm talking to you. How are you today?" "I am fine. How are you today?" I really hate that static feel. I always like characters singing around. They're moving their bodies. They're moving they have facial expressions you can use. Sadly, there's not a lot of synonyms for grinned. Grinning is a very limited phrase.
You could use smirked if you want to sound like a fucking fanfic writer, you amateurs.
Hey, smirk is good, but like grin, it has to be very rarely applied. You have to be very careful with that.
She chuckled, I think, is my other pet peeve. It's interesting. Raymond and I have very different writing styles because he started out writing, and all of my initial forays into writing was like poetry and lyrics when I was a teenager. So it's interesting because you kind of evolve differently. Like when I write personally, I do a lot of, I try to like make it as sharp as I can, you know, like just get to the point. You're in the scene, kind of like a song would have you do, where there's no time to talk about too many things.
Yeah. And I typically like to let a bit of the... I like being on point, but I also kind of like letting a scene breathe, where there's a little bit... Like, feeding little details that I can pick up later. One of the fun things I actually did just recently in the story I'm writing is that... Because you can go back and edit things. You can go back and add things and insert them. I have a character that he's having a sit down by a fireplace with someone he's helping out of the cold, and they have steaming hot mugs, and this is a fantasy world, And I didn't want to give them hot chocolate because that felt like very, very like post 1910 type deal. Even though I'm pretty sure that's been around for a while, it felt more modern than it should in that setting, and it would make sense for the character, but it felt like something that just wouldn't jive. So instead, I actually created a type of mead that could be heated, like it was supposed to be served hot. And then I'm like, well, I got to introduce this mead, and I don't want to, like, the flow of the paragraph doesn't allow me to, like, go into it. So I went back to an earlier section of the story where he was in a foreign location and introduced the mead there as, like, an element of that location that he could import and buy in mass. So he actually had this on hand. And it helped actually flesh out that scene a little bit more because it got me thinking in a different way. So it's like a lot of that kind of stuff that I feed through my work, where I can just pick up a piece or I can thread a piece back. It helps when you just bounce back and forth inside of a piece.
Yeah. Raymond very much likes to kind of get a detailed scene in a world. I personally like to focus on the character, so I don't write very often. I usually just practice just to keep my skills up in case I ever have to write. Something I like to do is I like to use the character's thoughts as narration. Because then you can just really get in there and get the scene from their perspective.
Yeah, that was something that I've recently. If you actually read Forged in Flames, you start seeing that's where I start experimenting with that and actually getting better at it, because like the thoughts as narration, like the italicized thought is very good, but it's also very clanky when you get down to it because you're shifting tense a lot and that kind of such. It flows much better if you're just using like if you're just using it as though the dialogue, the prose is tinted by the character you're following.
Plus sometimes you can use that to fill the gap between two events happening without putting in like the action of that event. You could just kind of fill it in your head. You don't need to describe it.
Oh yeah, like oh we did this thing, like it's fine.
Like the one of the most recent things I showed you has a character going from like the bathroom upstairs to like the door, and I don't have to say that they went to the door. You could just kind of infer it.
Yeah, just say like when I got to my dorm room, like it completely cuts out like all this detail you don't need when you're like going down the coming out of the bathroom, going down the steps, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sharp. Always want it to be sharp. That's like the thing I go.
Any students die yet?
Anyway.
No, not yet.
Well, we're about to find out.
Yep.
On their journey through the wastelands, Velvet's son and Octavia spotted a massive Grim headed back the way they had come, right toward Shade Academy. Should we go back? Octavia asked. Velvet bunched up her shoulders. We can't stop to fight them. They're going to complicate this battle, but not as much as Jill is. We can't get distracted. Plus, we need to conserve our aura for the fight. Especially if Carmine's still supercharged. Fortunately, there wasn't anything as big as a King Taijitu. But the unsettling Grim caravan of Dromedons, Jackalopes, and Giraffes was the last thing Shade needed to deal with. Velvet hated to think that of her teammates having to fend off the creatures in the midst of an existing battle. Sun backed her
up. We stick to the plan. We stop Jill before she can head the Shade herself. If she gets the Shade and starts draining our side's aura, that'll give her more and more to lend to her own forces.
Octavia craned her neck and watched the Grim with concern. Velvet knew she was thinking about her friends because that's where her heart was too. But her mind was firmly fixed on the mission. She told herself she wasn't leaving them to their fates. She was doing whatever she could to protect them. Maybe the Grim will actually help, Velvet said with as much optimism as she could. The Crown's forces are standing between Shade and the Grim. They'll be attacked on two fronts. She pulled out her scroll, but the signal was too weak to send a warning back. Not that a warning would really do them good in the long run. No one would be checking their scrolls in the middle of a fight. Octavia swiped her damp hair out of her eyes. Let's just try to get back to them as soon as we can, okay?
Agreed.
Sun squinted, looking around.
So where's this hidden base?
Hidden, but it should be visible a little ways ahead, Octavia said. That way, I think. It's hard to say with the way the sands change out here. Velvet's vision was better than Octavia's, but she didn't see anything on the dim horizon as twilight settled over the desert. They marched on, Velvet trying to hurry as much as the terrain allowed. Then Octavia stopped. I don't get it. It should be just about here. She turned in a slow circle. The only marks in the sand were her own tracks leading back to the south.
Maybe the sand swallowed it.
Brace yourselves, Octavia said. She pulled out her kris and loaded it with gravity dust.
Brace ourselves on what?
Octavia took off skating on the surface of the sand in a wide circle, faster and faster, her arm holding her kris out. Each time she passed, more and more of the sand shifted beneath her. Velvet swung her arm up to cover her face, as Octavia created a small whirlpool of sand using her semblance and the gravity dust in her weapon. The sand moved slowly around them, picking up more and more grains as if magnetized. Then suddenly, Velvet spotted something bright poking up out of the ground. There! Velvet yelled, pointing. As Octavia swept the sand away, Velvet saw metal scaffolding that looked like a large broadcasting antenna. And then, the base was gradually revealed. A crevasse in the earth. Octavia skidded to a halt, kicking up a final wave of sand. By now, it had piled up into a high wall around them, drifting down to dust their hair and clothes. Velvet shook her head. She hated it when sand got in her ears. The three of them looked at the entrance, then to one another. Follow me, Octavia said. She used the light on her scroll to illuminate a long passage. They followed as she led them into a broad cavern where 4 paths branched off in different directions. That's the one. Octavia led them toward the east entrance, and soon they'd reach another cavern. This one lit, and she held up a hand to halt them. They're ahead. They crept up to the opening and peered in. It was just as Coco had described, a room filled with beds and a throne carved out of a rock against one wall. There was only one problem. There was no sign of the 2 people they'd come here to find. Where's Gil? And Carmine?
Or any of the bad guys.
Sun added. Octavia shrugged. Maybe they left already? We would have just seen them, Velvet said. It's you.
I lost my place. Where am I?
Let's just ask someone.
Let's just ask someone.
Sun stalked out into a room impatiently. Someone, Velvet called. She sighed. He could cause real problems if they weren't careful. He just does whatever comes to mind, doesn't he? Octavia asked. Velvet sighed. I'm sure he's not there. I'm sure there's not much thinking involved at all. She said and hurried after her son. Oh, Savage Velvet. I like Savage Velvet.
Yeah. We need to bring Emo Velvet back, though. I miss Emo Velvet.
Yeah. No one can understand my pain.
Except you, Linkin Park.
She found him standing next to a bed, unplugging an unconscious man from the aura monitor and undoing the straps holding him in place. The man's eyes fluttered, and he woke with a start.
Easy.
Sun said, holding up his hands.
We're here to help.
Sun helped him, and Velvet could tell this man hadn't trained as a huntsman. If he'd had a semblance, he probably wouldn't have been left here and used by Jill. His aura likely took a while to build back up. As Octavia wandered into the room behind her, Sun began interrogating the man in his own way.
So, yeah. Have you seen a glowing woman, maybe with a scary redhead?
Still you.
Oh, I guess, yeah. They both left together with 3 huntsmen about 10 minutes ago.
That didn't make any sense, though. We would have seen them. Velvet said. Octavia turned to look back the way they'd come. Maybe they took one of the other tunnels. She wondered aloud. Velvet bolted for the passageway, Octavia right behind her. When she remembered Sun. He was still by the man's side, lost in conversation. Sun, you can take everyone and get them to safety, Velvet told him. It was hard to believe he was ever the leader of Team Season. I almost said Season, she thought, as he couldn't even be trusted to follow orders. But she hoped he would do the right thing this time. Velvet turned and ran back to the junction of tunnels, joining Octavia. Which one? Velvet asked. She didn't want to split up. Octavia threw up her hands. We'll have to make our best guess, she said. If only Fox were here. Velvet listened, but she couldn't hear anyone except Sun. Oh, the vocal cords voicing Octavia. Then at once, there were some confused noises bouncing around, coming from multiple directions. Some of those other paths must connect, she thought. There were more passageways than they realized. Octavia was staring at the south gate. That one, she said, running into it at top speed. Wait, Velvet said when she finally caught up. How do you know this is the right one? Because when we came through here last time, this cave was blocked by an avalanche. Octavia said, which Carmine could have cleared with her semblance if the rocks were small enough. Velvet shivered. The last time they had tangled with Carmine, I'd flip in pronunciations. Carmine, I don't really care. It had taken all of Team Kiffi to stop her with the assistance from Edward Caspian and, oddly enough, Berwick, whom they had tricked into fighting her. Now what did Flu send me? But Coco had said, "You're a one-person army," and that gave Velvet a boost of confidence as she prepared to face whatever was coming her way. With her weapon and semblance, Velvet still had Team Kiffi with her in a way, she realized. They moved through the tunnel, stepping carefully around scattered skeletons and old mining outfits. They must have been trapped here years ago in a cave-in, Octavia whispered. That meant there was a pretty good chance they were faunus, Velvet thought sadly. But before Velvet could dwell on the thought, she heard new voices up ahead. A soft but urgent voice cried out. Hurry! Jax is waiting for us! Velvet was willing to bet that was Jill. I don't think that was the right voice for her, whatever. She had recognized Carmen's voice anywhere. You've already juiced out the soldiers with aura, Carmen said. You're too important. That's the last place you should be now. Jill still stood her ground. Our subjects need to see their monarchs fighting for Vacuo, fighting for... Someone's coming. Still, Velvet and Octavia managed to catch them by surprise. As Velvet ran towards them, she took in every detail. Carmine was standing in front of another cave and stones and dust piled around her. Jill stood to the side, a bow and quiver of arrows slung onto her back. She was surrounded by 3 tall huntsmen in armor with silver armbands. Can we get streams where Raymond and Molly just give out writing tips? And maybe when we're done with this, we can just have, like, another stream.
Yeah, no, we might do... I would love to do more consistent streams in the future. I think it'd be kind of fun to kind of get a streaming catalog going.
Yeah.
I was debating whether or not to make an entire stream channel just to keep it, because like there's call it Celtic Streamix Productions. See how well that could go over.
We could talk about like soundtracks and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would ask to be in the RWBY reactions, but that's Dashi's thing, and I'm not going to step on her toes.
I mean, we're very much in the more the merrier type deal. Where we sometimes have a cycling guest. It depends, because Tom might actually be back in. So we'll see, because he's picking up the show apparently again.
Again, we're not RWBY fans. We are RWBY hostages. And you are all my cellmates.
Someone quote her on that. Someone in the Discord quote her on that. Where were we?
Velvet activated a hard light replica of Yatsuhashi's sword and charged towards Carmine. The redhead swept a hand around and several small boulders flew out of the blockade towards Velvet. Velvet swung the broadsword and smashed the boulders to bits, but Carmine fired the sharp fragments towards Velvet's face. Velvet leaned back as they zipped by. They flipped forward into a somersault, sword out with the blade facing Carmine. I'm gonna stick with Carmine. Tell me if I don't. The hunter stepped aside, and Velvet crashed into a crumbling rock barrier. She caught a glimpse of Octavia facing off against the 3 huntsmen, fending them off with her dagger. She was as fierce now as she had been when they fought the Ravagers during reinitiation, and Velvet was glad to have Octavia by her side. Hey, Velvet, Carmen said mockingly. Long time no see. It was nice catching up with Coco and Yatsuhashi, though you were always my favorite. She pressed a finger to her lips. Don't tell the others. Yatsuhashi's sword faded away. Velvet noticed that Carmine had only one of her side. She now remembered that she's seen the other one back at the club, transformed into gold by Rumpel's semblance. Why are you working for the crown? Velvet asked. How can you do this? Do you really need money that badly? This isn't about money. At least not for me. The twins and I go way back to my academy days. I fight because I believe in them and their cause. Carmine unsheathed her sigh and sent another rock flying at Velvet. Why do you care so much about restoring the throne to Vacuo? Velvet summoned sharp retribution and then fired at Carmine. The tunnel rumbled and tiny stones fell on Velvet from above. Idiot, you're going to bring the whole mine down on us! Carmine lunged with her sigh and Velvet brought up her left arm to block it. She turned her elbow up, level with her face, and jabbed the arm blade out towards Carmine, while slashing at her exposed stomach with the other. Carmine jumped back and dropped her sigh, but it remained floating in the air when she'd been holding it a moment before, and then spun it towards Velvet. Velvet brought her hands together and caught it midair, inches from her face. Carmine's semblance tugged at it, but Velvet held on tight. You need to take better care of these. Velvet turned the weapon around as Fox's tonfas wore out. She attacked Carmine with her own weapon, using her own moves against her. You're a quick study.
Okay,
Carmine
that's
said.
that's pretty dope. I like that.
Yeah, that's dope. A ring of rocks circled her head as she parried the short blade with the stone projectiles. You're doing better than your friend over there. Velvet forced herself not to fall for Carmine's obvious attempt at distraction, but it sounded like Octavia was having a rough time now. She was fighting 3 powerful huntsmen on her own, and they were powered up by Jill's aura. We don't have time for this! Clear the rubble, Carmine! Carmine made an exasperated sound. Then she smiled. Bye, Velvet. A pile of stones blocking the cave flew at Velvet. She lifted her arms to cover her face just before the wall slammed into her, knocking her backwards and half burying her. She was dazed for a moment, watching to see Octavia fighting the other huntsman, her weapon moving too fast to see, as rocks continued to fly from the diminishing pile of rubble. A beam of moonlight cut through the darkness. Carmine was breaking through. Then something glittered in front of Velvet. She pulled herself from the rocks covering her and stood up. It was a red crystal. It was dust. If the cave had been closed off before the Great War because of an avalanche, if the cave was too unstable to rescue those trapped miners, that meant the dust had never been removed. This might be the last small repository of dust in Vacuo. Octavia! Velvet called. Fire! She held up the dust crystal. Octavia turned and saw what Velvet was holding. Even without Fox's team speak, she knew instantly what Velvet was thinking. Now they had a way to stop Jill from reaching the battlefield, cutting off her ability to send aura to the troops there. I'm checking chat real quick. It took Carmine a little longer to catch on. No! She said as Octavia waved her Chris and sent a torrent of fire from the blade towards her, then past her. And into a glittering fire dust deposit on the wall. The blast ignited the whole vein. The entire the tunnel was very bright and very hot for a moment before everything went.
All right. Wow, we got through 4 chapters today, people. Oh, damn. How is everyone doing? I'm going to edit the stream so the title's proper.
I try to remember what was the voice I did for Jill, because I know she's going to appear in the next couple chapters. What did Buttery sound like?
Did Buttery sound like this?
Yes.
Okay.
Buttery sounds like this.
I can't wait to be angry with that voice.
I'll try and send you some clips of Kari's voice from Digimon so you understand exactly, like, you actually sound like her. It's really, really weird. Yeah, so how's everyone liking the book? We're actually getting some good fights, at least description-wise. I think the fights are being fine. What do you think, Molly?
I do like the fights. They're my favorite part. This is clearly what the writer is good at.
Yeah, he's really shining here. But everything else feels...
Reading through the fights are my favorite part.
Yeah, they're super detailed, and they're using creative uses of the powers. They're exploring them in different ways. He's making good use of the fact that he's in the prose, so he can actually describe more esoteric powers, like Yatsuhashi's semblance, that sort of stuff, and how it interacts with the world. Whereas in a visual medium, it wouldn't convey quite as well, like like a determination semblance, for example. God, I hate when they did Ironwood. How did they ruin my boy? How did they ruin my boy?
Look what they've done to my boy.
I seriously, I don't understand it. They're just allergic to writing interesting things. Oh, man.
See, wish I could find some tips on writing fights. I'd say I've never written a fight myself, but I'd say the thing that make fights most interesting is if you focus on exactly what needs to be focused on. And I know that doesn't sound like great information, but if there is multiple people fighting, you really want to just hone in on one thing at a time. Because the whole point of a fight in writing is the same as a fight in animation. You want your audience to kind of follow one person at a time, follow along with it, and understand what's happening before you move on to the next thing.
The thing that gets difficult.
As far as describing
the thing that gets
too
difficult,
much or not enough, it depends.
The thing that gets difficult with that is having multiple fights going on simultaneously. And in a fight, I generally try to avoid that. I typically try to have. The biggest issue mentally is like when you have like, say you're at a fighting tournament and you have 5 fights going on simultaneously. The way you break that up is that you focus on each fight individually and do that. But then when you get an actual fight where it's like, 5v5 and you have like everyone kind of pairing off, that's where it gets messy because then you have bleed over between the fights. The way I typically find it easiest is I find the one character that's going to flitter between the most fights simultaneously and just describe their involvement in the fight and try to get through them as much detail as possible for what they get involved in. And so you can kind of pick up on how things have been going. Like, when they flitter on to the next section of a fight where they move on from one opponent to another, they can pick up and say, oh, this opponent has had already been weakened earlier because of something else. You can kind of pick up from there. But typically, I try to avoid those types of fights anyway. I always try to find it, like, characters acting in sync in some way. So you don't have that going on. It gets very messy very quickly if you have multiple characters fighting in the same place. Which is why, obviously, they had Sun stay back.
Yeah. And they're not focusing on Octavia in that fight.
Yeah, they're very much
she's,
focusing.
Like, relevant.
Yeah, it wasn't relevant. What was relevant, the only thing that was relevant was that that Octavia was struggling because of the aura. That's really it. And that's all the information we needed.
Bro, I love doing the voice for Carmine.
It's a fun voice.
It's so fun.
There's a lot of fun voices to do in this. Oh, God help us if they actually show up in the actual show at some point and they have real voices.
Retroactively go back and re-record all of these.
Yeah. Oh God, no. I would sooner just go to Rooster Teeth and be like, look, guys, we've already voiced all these people. Can we just do the voices?
Dude, I would love being able to like voice something in a real project just once or twice.
Well, now you have a new.
It's like
now you actually have
what?
a good mic. I actually have a role that I've been waiting on people to fill, but no one's actually filled it. So maybe.
It's like something that like acting and things like that is the type of thing that like I was always too stage fright to do. So I just practicing alone.
Yeah. Say, guys, sorry I'm late. What did I miss? Well, you're at the end of the stream. So you missed the stream. But we got up through chapter 18, and stuff's going down. Molly for Fat Man Falling's abridged. Maybe you could ask Fat Man if you have a role you could fill. I have a project that I could fill you in on. It's my recent Godzilla project has been stalled for a little while because of the editor's been waylaid, but I'm excited to get that back up and running. There's so many characters that none of the characterization is sticking. I don't even remember what Sage has done. Sage has literally done nothing this entire book. Sage has not been a character. In fact, for that matter, Neptune has barely been a character. Scarlet's barely been a character. They've gotten more characterization than Sage has, but Sage has done nothing. Really, there's a lot of characters that have just done nothing in this book. The glut of characters that they've foisted on this novel series has been embarrassing. But I think we should wrap it up here. I'm starting to feel tired, and I need to go get food. So,
Book recap? book recap is let's see if I can do this. So wild shit happens in Vacuo, and the real important thing is that now you got everybody is trying to fight this like secret society that wants to take back Vacuo and restore it to a monarchy.
Yeah, that's about the bigger. That's the the short end of it. It's not. There's already things that have been counteracted in the lore. I don't know. Like at this point, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, the fights are happening and I'm enjoying them, but there's so much stupid about this book. It really relied on the this person's totally evil, but they're not supposed to be yet trope, and that pissed me off to no end.
It's literally in my notes for voices. Is that Rumple's tone is I am secretly bad, but not really.
Yeah.
Which I wrote like on week 4.
No, I think that was like week 2.
Yeah.
Chapter 4 probably, because that's where Rumple I think really appeared.
Yeah. That is literally in my notes for the characters.
I don't know if Sage had the best design out of Team Sun. It was definitely interesting, but I liked all of Team Sun for the most part.
What Molly discard name? Discord. Dude, I'm in the server with you.
Yeah.
It's Molly Rhymaster.
Floof, why do you always gotta go for the low blows? Alright, people. Thank you so much for joining us on this Let's Read today. I hope you all enjoyed yourself, and remind you, please do support the channel on Patreon at patreon.com/CelticPhoenix. For $1 or more, you get access to Team Frostbite Discord server, the Tundra, where I, as well as Molly and other big YouTube personalities for the RWBY fandom, such as Fatman Falling and Dashi Lee, all interact with our fans on the regular. Thank you all so much for joining us.
I like that you included me as a big YouTube personality for RWBY. That is a complete lie.
Well, at this rate, you're becoming one. People seem to like you, so... thank you so much for joining us.
Guys, come to the server. I yell a lot.
Yeah, she yells a lot. A lot. We'll catch you all on the flip side.
Bye.